remaster, reboot, remake, remilk, milkathon. We're pulling you out of the deep freeze, runner. Don't look at us with those lachrymose eyes. You don't need to be afeared. What came before doesn't matter. It's just raw material, filament from which we'll 3D print an unspiritual successor. You were born broken and ugly, but we can make you useful and appealing. Dopamine saturated, serotonin reuptake inhibited, all of your potential realized. There is a new entity in the gaming landscape. An old name pulled out of storage and dusted off. As usual, the reboot has the same name as the original. In all the years to come, we shall have to clear up the ambiguity, calling it Marathon 2026 or Marathon Reboot. It has been given another name, though that is considered impolite. Let's take a look and see what all the fuss is about. At its core, Marathon is a first-person shooter. The same is true of Marathon 2026. That isn't the complete list of similarities, but we should also keep in mind that times have changed. An FPS in the modern age is almost entirely different. We aren't dealing with dark forces and doom. These days you need to include sliding and a grappling hook. Parkour is pretty standard, at least in a limited form. Jump towards a ledge and you might mantle on top. Holding 3 guns at a time is considered luxury. The rebooted Marathon is definitely in this more modern lineage. It's class-based, which triggers a reflex. Oh, you mean like Team Fortress 2. Normally that's accurate, but not in this case. It's actually less similar to TF2 than other relatives. Classes in TF2 have radically different stats. Wolfenstein Enemy Territory also has classes. Each is unique, but they're all basically just soldiers. A guy with an MP40 is still dangerous, no matter his class. That's the general approach of the Marathon reboot. It doesn't matter which type of player you're facing. They all have similar shapes, movement speed, and hit points. However, we also have more modern influences. One of these we're saving for later in the video. The obvious one is Overwatch. Each class has multiple activated abilities on cooldown timers, plus a couple that would be called passive abilities, except that half of them do have hotkeys to activate, so we have to call them traits instead. These are mostly to differentiate the classes a bit more. The activated abilities with cooldown are very distinctive. This puts Marathon 2026 into the hero shooter lineage, among esteemed peers like Concord 1 and Highguard. Of course, there are more details than that. It has various stats that you can influence and upgrade. A loot system exists, giving both equipment and consumables. And like TF2, you can pay real money for various hats. The Marathon reboot has 2 layers of meta progression. There is loot, which is temporary and can be lost. Then we have all the other systems, which are fairly minor on their own. Getting better at headshots will give you more of an advantage, though it's hard to quantify because these stats aren't even defined in the game, and most of this progress is reset every so often. Making a good game is quite a challenge. There are many aspects that have to be done right. You don't get bonus points unless they're exceptional, but if you get them wrong, any one can make the game unplayable. Arguably the most important of all is map design. It's better to have outstanding level design than most other features. No matter how fun your weapons are, you'd rather not be on a featureless plane. Having really good maps will dictate the flow of the game, and the Marathon reboot has maps that are, at least, quite good. From a gameplay perspective, there's plenty of variation. Confined interior spaces, and some that are more open. Wide landscapes, mountain passes, isolated prefabs. There are obstacles, choke points, and bypass routes. Verticality is almost always a factor. Sometimes it's looking for the ladder to get somewhere. Other times there's a sniper on the roof, and maybe that's you. To get away from that, you might find some tunnels or bulletproof glass. There's also a layer of randomness to the fixed maps. Some things can spawn in different places each time. Others are optional, rolling a subset from the list. This tells us that the maps are functional. They allow for gameplay to happen. If you could have only one thing, that's the important part. But level design also needs to have atmosphere. Grey boxes alone are not good enough, unless they have a concrete texture. This is something Marathon 2026 does quite well. It gives you the setting of an aborted colony. The underlying terrain is natural. We can see native fauna and possibly imported grass. Apart from players and police robots, these animals are your greatest threat. Explosive creatures called ticks. Nothing too remarkable, but it's a bit of variety. On top of nature, there is a layer of civilization. Vehicles, infrastructure, prefabricated buildings. You can have doors, windows, buttons, and computer terminals. The first map has a wall, splitting it in half. It's not clear what the purpose was. Are you trying to keep something out or in? Animals, people, robots, water? But this is the sort of feature you'd expect to see on a colony. It's just that the wall was incomplete. You can only get through in a few places, but you can also go underneath. This works on the level of gameplay and setting. The building style also makes a lot of sense. They are reasonably sturdy, but clearly built to a template. Easier to develop if you reuse the same assets over and over. But it also works in-universe. Of course every office uses the same prefab. Call it lazy if you must, but it would absolutely happen. For many of the same reasons as in game development. You only need a few modular parts to build almost anything. Of course, that doesn't apply to the tunnels. Those need to be excavated and reinforced. Constraints that would make all tunnels look similar. That's one of the reasons nobody enjoys a sewer level. Outside the buildings, the weather is quite notable. There's plenty of rain, though not quite on Camino's level. Sometimes it isn't raining at all, maybe even half the time. Overall, it produces a nice atmosphere. Spending time in this environment is quite nice. A little bit eerie, minor desolation. Hostile aliens and police robots could be anywhere. That weather is a double-edged sword. Standing in the rain is actually good for you. The stamina gauge is called heat, and water cools you down. But you might also be struck by lightning. For the most part, this is a compelling setting. A lost colony for reasons unknown. Nature trying to demolish civilization. Population of 0, but with no bodies lying around. There is at least one AI that might be evil. Your only peers are cybernetic puppets for a disembodied consciousness. And they are almost universally hostile. It's a solid world, somewhat wasted on multiplayer. Why, you could make a campaign on this map. Create a single-player first-person shooter with a story. You know, kind of like a marathon game. It could be an entry in the series rather than a reboot. Alas, that is not the world we live in. As for the setting of the game, it's mostly fine. There are a lot of strange visual choices. Plus signs everywhere, and repeated text. A certain amount of this would be plausible. Alignment marks for the construction process. Necessary details that aren't worth painting over. But this isn't plausible with the sheer number of them. At a certain point, it takes more effort to print all this text. It's not remotely practical, just detail for its own sake. In other words, two-dimensional greebling. This is certainly a choice you can make. Just don't pretend there's an in-universe reason for it. But one thing is completely inexcusable. Not just implausible, unnecessary, or an eyesore. Take a look at some of the vehicles. These often have tank tracks, which is fine. For an environment such as this, those make good off-road vehicles. Or they would be if these were functional tracks. Forget the missing details like track tension and guide horns, or even how the track itself is constructed. Look at these track pads. They are smooth and hard. One of those would be acceptable. Real tanks and bulldozers have one or the other. Smooth rubber or steel with a tread pattern. This is because you need traction. Either the tread or the terrain needs to deform. The normal solution is to use both. Rubber tires with some kind of tread pattern. The only time you'd pick neither is when building a train, and those are quite specialized vehicles. A train can only run on the correct kind of tracks while they're in good condition. Tank tracks are the opposite, they're for off-road use. Anything you might need to drive on, tracks can handle. But to do that, the tank treads need a tread pattern. This would be incredibly easy to accomplish. You could take the smooth track links and carve a pattern, maybe a company logo for dystopian points. Marathon Reboot does not understand traction. Some vehicles are effectively half-tracks. There is a nice visible wheel on its own, which allows us to see that the tread pattern is painted on. Obviously, this doesn't work in the real world. It's even worse than the tracks, because at least those have gaps. The only way this wheel would have traction is with mud. Hope the terrain sticks to the wheel, and that gives you some grip. This is not a minor technical detail. If you've ever seen a wheel, you would know it's not a smooth surface. You don't need a lot of knowledge to guess that's important. Nor is this a technical limitation. Games are full of ways to fake detail, and none of them are used here. Even the simplest bump map would be better than nothing. This is not a novel problem, it's been solved a dozen times. We absolutely have the power to show a tread pattern.
These are just totally flat planes, and through a fancy process called parallax mapping, we fake the depth so it just looks like things are sticking up.
Nor will any in-universe excuses work. Oh, but it's 3D printed. That only makes the problem worse. Traditional manufacturing likes to simplify. If a solid cylinder is good enough, that's great. Cutting all those little holes would be more work. But they are necessary, so you can't leave them out. Smooth wheels are not good enough. But that principle seems solid. Milling away material takes time and effort. It would be easier to do nothing. And that's why appealing to 3D printing is no excuse. Additive manufacturing is when you build a part from nothing. The wheel is not a blank cylinder to begin with. Every voxel in the wheel needs to be put there. And with 3D printing, the lazy way is to do nothing. Leaving gaps is easy, filling them is work. To print a tread pattern, you selectively do nothing. Whoever told you that 3D printing is to blame, that was a lie. These are not the flaws of additive manufacturing. This is a decision made by an artist. That same excuse has been used for character design. It doesn't work any better there. Some of these designs have unnecessary hair and clothing. They are absolutely not optimized for 3D printing. There are 1,000 changes you might make to a humanoid body. Adding a puffy jacket would never be on the list. Hair is not necessary because most classes don't have it. It's fine if you want to make ugly characters for some reason. Maybe you want to sell skins that look better, so the baseline version has to be repulsive. But that is not in-universe reasoning. Once again, it's not something you can blame on 3D printing. Pragmatic designs have their own appeal, and that's not what this is. Marathon 2026 is going for something else entirely. The interesting part to this game is not the gameplay, at least not the core gameplay of running around with guns. That's a fairly simple matter of loading into a map. Then you shoot other players, or don't, and hopefully you pick up some better guns to shoot next time. That is sufficient for a multiplayer shooter. In the good old days, we had deathmatch and we liked it. What Marathon 2026 does well is adding more layers. One does not simply load in and shoot other players. There are several other things to do along the way, and there are quite a lot of these objectives. On a personal level, you'll be sent in new directions, visiting parts of the map that you normally wouldn't, picking fights that might be unwise. If you got comfortable on the first map, eventually you'll be sent elsewhere. The same applies when playing in a team. Now you have 2 or 3 missions running. Ideally, you complete all of them in the same run. There is an incentive for that, as we'll cover soon. But the real benefit is when you look beyond allies. Perhaps you have a mission to go here and hack this terminal. There are only a finite number of these objectives, so it's very possible that some other player has the exact same goal, or at least something that puts him in the general area. Now you have players who are not allies in the same location. They could just walk up and complete their missions, but that would be quite risky. Maybe it's safer to just shoot the other guy before he can shoot you. Of course, he's thinking the exact same thing. This is an excellent bit of game design. Now we aren't relying on hotspots to push players together. Here's a wall, this is the only way to cross it, so you might see another player. Objectives will actively draw players to specific locations. Sometimes they'll have to fight NPCs, which probably means firing a gun, and that makes noise. Anyone within earshot knows where you are, and that you're distracted, and your magazine is not full. This is a great way to encourage conflict. It doesn't even feel artificial. There are alternatives to fighting. The system works like this. During the tutorial, you're assigned to Cortana. It's her job to analyze all sensor data and generate mission objectives. As you finish her missions, she'll give you new ones. And eventually, she'll introduce you to other AIs. They have their own missions and motives. In a way, this is the equivalent of a campaign. These conversations are subjective to the player. Everyone gets the same monologue, but in their own time. Talking to the AI is the main way that story is delivered. A single-player game would have expanded upon these parts, possibly merged some of them with the core gameplay. As it is, they are confined to gaps between missions. In a way, that's the only practical design. During each mission, things might get stressful. Can't listen to the monologue while dodging bullets. The other objection reveals the true problem. What if someone is talking on voice chat? That could be your friends, or potentially hostile players. And in this scenario, your allies are the bigger threat. Each time you complete a story contract, you need menu time. Hand in this task, get assigned a new one. But what if the AI wants to deliver some lore? You can stay a while and listen, or skip a skipper. Neither option is particularly good. If you skip the monologue, you lack context. Now you're just spawning in and chasing the objective marker, because it gives you gameplay rewards rather than story. And if you skip something, there's no log of past conversations. You'll have to watch lore videos, or wait for a season reset. On the other hand, maybe you are paying attention to every detail, taking your time, listening carefully. But it's not just your time, is it? Your entire team is waiting for you to finish reading, to get out of the menus and let them actually play the game. There is no real solution to this. All you can do is find a group that matches your style, because anyone who can't wait will leave. Next time you hit the matchmaker, you get a random replacement. Eventually, one of them might be patient enough. Strictly speaking, this is not a unique problem. Many games have menus. It's possible to spend a lot of time looking through your weapon selection. That's even worse for extraction shooters, where anything you bring is a gamble. That alone could lead to players dithering. Gear comparisons are unavoidable in anything loot-based. That could be solved by just making a straight shooter. You know, like a marathon game. However, there is value in a loot system. Menu time isn't a problem in single-player. You know, like a marathon game. If you want to keep the loot and multiplayer, there will be delays. When you add characters and monologues, that's something else. It adds another layer of delays, compounding with the gear comparison. And we haven't mentioned all the meta progression systems. Loot is part of it, but items can be lost in battle. Other upgrades will stay with you, at least until the next reset. One layer of this is the AI characters. Each of them is unlocked after doing certain missions. It's possible to gain XP with each AI and its company. Having a wider selection also gives you more contracts. Now you can pick the objective that best suits you. Radiant quests can even be re-rolled. And in theory, you can save up multiple monologues. Make progress with each company, but don't listen to their speeches. Only tackle those when you've finished multiplayer for the night. Progress with each company will unlock a tech tree, upgrades that make you stronger or improve the shop. These upgrades will cost resources, or at least some currency, but gaining levels with the company will give rewards. Being a modern game, Marathon Reboot has a Season Pass. Apparently, Season 2 added a new progression system, the Cradle, which lets you improve your base attributes, as well as their derived stats and some extra perks. But this can be adjusted between each mission. It seems like a natural part of the game, plus it can serve as an item sink. However, it would be nice if there were tooltips, anything to document exactly what agility and firewall do. Then there's another part of the game which doesn't exactly give you power. Some of the lore you unlock is stored in the codex. These can take a while to read, causing more delays. But at least for these, you can come back later. The codex also serves as an achievement system, yet another set of objectives for you to chase. Unlocking some of these will give you skins. It's good that you can get some skins without paying real money. After all, this is a game with an upfront purchase price, and it has a season pass, and DLC, and a skin shop. Almost every monetization system under the sun. But hey, at least there are no loot boxes. All these systems are good on paper, except the season pass and skin shop. But the problem is how they fit together. So many of these are not in harmony with multiplayer, and there's not much you can do to fix that. Trying to make it more elegant means ripping something out, either multiplayer or meta progression. If they can't be sacrificed, you have to live with that tension. Maybe some tweaks can make it better. Or the players can watch some theory crafting and tier lists. Shift the burden away from the game itself. Get the internet video man to come up with your opinions. Now you know which guns are better without thinking. And he can read the lore to you in a dramatic voice. Now it's time to look at that multiplayer bit. Marathon 2026 is what we call an extraction shooter, not to be confused with Rainbow Six Extraction, which is not. We're not going to read you the definition of extraction shooter, nor will we point to Tarkov and say, it's like that. The more interesting angle is lineage, looking at the family tree and seeing what we can find there. Not all the way back to Pong and Space Invaders. As a first-person shooter, we could bring up Doom, or the other Doom, or potentially an obscure game titled Marathon. Instead, let's look at the most recent common ancestor. Extraction shooters are one branch of the tree. On the far side, there is a cousin named Battle Royale. Superficially, they don't look very similar. How can Fortnite be related to Tarkov? From what we can see, both are descended from the same thing, a famous game called DayZ, or DayZ for the Americans, which itself inherits from Arma 2. Extraction shooter and Battle Royale diverge from there. These are two of the most trendy genres of the past decade, and they're forked from the same origin. At first glance, DayZ is nothing special. The Z stands for zombie, and there are many zombie games. Maybe the rest of the mechanics will help. Let's see. Open world, survival, crafting. No, that just makes it worse. Do you have any idea how many of those were on Steam Greenlight?
You wanna play a zombie game?
No! I don't wanna fucking play a zombie game. I'm tired of fucking zombies.
What makes DayZ interesting is that it's multiplayer and PvP enabled. You can shoot other players as easily as the zombies, but you're not specifically encouraged to. This is not a deathmatch, it's ambiguous. Other players might kill you, or they might not. There are a few other key features. Proximity voice chat lets you speak to anyone nearby. You can negotiate with someone hostile, or just paranoid. Make friends, team up, and then stab the other guy in the back. There is loot in the world, which has some value to people, especially with those survival mechanics. You can't sit and wait forever, you need supplies. That pressure rewards teamwork, as well as betrayal. Another key element is being server-based, in the classic sense, not the always-online way. You go to the server browser and pick your favorite. When you come back the next day, you're in the same world. It was running without you the whole time. Battle Royale drops many of these features. Survival mechanics don't make sense in a time-limited mode. Zombies don't really need to exist. Proximity voice chat becomes optional. The goal of the game is to be the last one alive. There's no longer any ambiguity. Every other player wants you dead, and vice versa. The loot is still there, but it's lost after the current match. Crafting would be pretty pointless. Map design and loot spawns create natural hotspots, but there's also a big circle that pushes players together. DayZ is the sort of game that you might play for months. Battle Royale is episodic, less than 1 hour. Extraction shooters keep some of the same mechanics. Survival meters are gone, but loot is even more important, because you can keep some of it between games. You don't just want enough, you want spares. Extraction sites are a new type of hotspot, one that attracts players with loot worth keeping. Of course, that can make them harder to kill. Zombies have their place as an always hostile entity. What's really important is that we have ambiguity. Players are not required to be enemies. Sometimes it's better to back away than to fight. Less risk of losing your stuff or attracting attention. You might have a preference for one or the other, but notice what both genres have sacrificed. In terms of gameplay, the survival mechanics. Think about why that is. The short duration. You can assume your character eats between matches. Everything gets reset when you start a new round, except in the extraction shooter, where you can start with equipment. The point is that you're connecting to a fresh instance of the map. All the loot has been restocked, and your health is full. What's really been sacrificed is persistence. Arma 2 had a server browser, because that was normal. There may be official servers, but those aren't necessary. You can run a dedicated server for your friends or clan. Every time you play, you're connecting to one or the other. Emphasis on joining one server in particular. You always go somewhere, to a place with its own culture and community. If you keep coming back, you'll get to know the regulars. And over time, they will get to know you. If you don't like the culture, go somewhere else. Each server is an island, with its own kind of finches. That's how multiplayer used to work, before the dark times, before the queue and the matchmaker. In the modern design, there is no community. There are no regulars, and nobody will remember your name. You don't matter, and neither does anyone else. All of you are names tossed into the matchmaker, a pool of players thrown together in any combination. Maybe there's a layer of sorting based on matchmaker ranking. This solution creates problems of its own. Another consequence is adding delays. Those don't exist with a server browser. You decide to connect, and you're immediately loading in, whereas the matchmaker can hold you in limbo for minutes. Battle Royale and Extraction Shooter are different. Both of them have changes from Arma and DayZ, and the consequences are not always thought out. Maybe they use a matchmaker because it's the modern way, or it's the console way, or because it gives more control. If you let players run dedicated servers, they have the power. Servers can have special rules or a list of mods. Those have to go, in the name of security or convenience or balance. Whatever the excuse, it also destroys reputations. The only people who stay with you are your squad, that three-man team that might have been auto-assigned. If you want a reputation to have an impact on the game world, you can't. The game does not support that function. Your only option is to go elsewhere, to create content. Upload videos of you playing the game, and become known that way. But that's having an audience, not peers. There's no way for players in your game session to gossip about you. Be careful around that hill, there's an incredibly good sniper up there. If you need help learning the ropes, talk to Brian. Robert won't be playing this week, he's getting married. You'll never find that with a matchmaker. And that, fundamentally, is the Marathon reboot. A series of maps on the far side of a matchmaker. There's a little more to it, but the machine will decide your groups. All the extra bits of lore are just a framing device. Personal objectives do add some variety, but it's quite repetitive. All games are to an extent, but this is bare multiplayer. It has to slot into your evenings where a similar game would go. Overwatch, PUBG, Call of Duty, Halo, Fortnite. You were already planning to be in a matchmaker queue, so why not make it Marathon 2026 instead? Of course, maybe that's not your thing. Perhaps you'd prefer a game like Marathon. No, not that one, the original Marathon. Some people had zero interest in Concord 1 or Concord 2. Concord 3 is the same thing at its core. 3 examples of trying to find the trendy online genre, and doing it with a questionable art style. If that's not appealing, there's nothing here for you. Maybe you would enjoy some lore videos. To get value from the gameplay, you have to be excited about the prospect of PvP. Speaking of which, that's another aspect that can vary. Allegedly, players in this game are hostile. By default, as a rule, they will shoot you. The only exception is when you're in the same group. In that case, they probably won't shoot you on purpose very much. The only risk of getting into a fight is losing, and you have a better chance to win if you shoot first. That gets more true the more lethal weapons are. Marathon Reboot has a fairly quick time to kill, especially if multiple players focus fire. There is no reputation, so no social consequences. Non-player enemies are not very threatening, so there's nothing to restrain hostilities, except the fear that someone with full health will catch you after the fight. We do not consider this desirable. The compelling part of DayZ is potential hostility. Someone might shoot on sight, or might not. You can influence the risk by how you play and where you go. If other players are guaranteed hostile, what's the point? It becomes a deathmatch with less action. Rumor has it that Ark Raiders has the opposite problem. Players are too friendly and have no reason for betrayal. Something similar is true in the Dark Zone of The Division 1.
There's no point fighting that guy, like I know he would just die instantly, and he didn't even want to fight.
Technically, it's a PvP zone in a game that mostly isn't, but these days, players are friendly. That's partially because the NPCs are bullet sponges. They come in large numbers, they're slow to kill, and quite lethal. 2 or 3 players working together have a much easier time. They can get more loot per hour than a solo player. Killing other players will only get you their recent loot. If it was picked up outside, that gear is safe. There are also mechanical consequences to going rogue, but there are incentives that keep the option viable. One does not simply walk out of the Dark Zone. You need to visit an extraction site and call in a chopper. The difference is that this is only for your loot. Getting out alive is really not important to the Division. Walking to the exit will not get you anything of value. Items have to go out with the helicopter. Marathon Reboot has an equivalent to this mechanic. There will be a decon box, which lets you send items to safety. In both cases, the extraction is a bit risky, but in the Division, you will be attacked by NPCs. More importantly, you have to visit the rope and attach your items, but you can also choose to hijack the delivery. Take all the loot for yourself, including other players. The prompt to betray is right there, tempting you. Another aspect is missing from re-marathon extractions. The Division will throw NPCs at you in waves. You can't extract while you're being shot at. There needs to be a moment of peace to attach your items to the rope. This is what we would call a sensible design. When other players are near, they can be a threat, but the gameplay loop still functions if you're the only player online. The extraction is always a little bit exciting. It's very similar to the equivalent moments in Left 4 Dead, the extraction itself, getting to the chopper, or the crescendo events along the way. Press a button to trigger a loud noise and alert the horde. Then you need to hold out against waves of enemies. Something similar happens in Helldivers 2. Extraction means facing an overwhelming swarm. In each case, you need to survive until the rescue vehicle arrives. A semi-scripted moment that raises the pressure and the tension. These are some of the most memorable and dramatic parts. Often, someone might be trapped on the far side of the horde. You can go back for him, or get everyone else out alive. Either way, it's a formula that creates fond memories. The Marathon Reboot has none of that. Extraction points come in 2 varieties. One of them is empty. You walk up, activate, and wait. Nothing happens for a while, and then you teleport away. There is no thrilling horde survival moment. Tension still exists, but it's mostly wondering if a player will turn up. The other extraction point is guarded. This type does have enemies, but not all that many. Enough to be difficult for a solo player, and not bad as a trio. It's the closest comparison, but still very different from Helldivers. Maybe it's more fitting for the overall game design. But we think the extraction in other games is far superior. And that's bad when this is called an extraction shooter. There's one more question that's been bothering us. Why is an extraction shooter named Marathon? Technically, this is 2 questions. Why the genre, and why that name? We think we've answered the former already. A lot of the modern landscape was defined by DayZ. Until then, there were a few trendy genres. Hero shooters based on Team Fortress 2, Dota clones, or lane-pushing hybrids, open-world survival Minecrafting. If you were making a multiplayer game for profit, you pick one of those. Then the tides began to turn. Now, if you want a trendy multiplayer cash cow, it's different. The safe choice is to pick a descendant of DayZ. Everything has to be a battle royale, even Tetris. We know that's a good decision because other companies have already done it. They've made 100 battle royales, and a few of them have survived. These generate a great deal of profit. We should copy them. Except maybe that's not safe anymore. It would be an obvious cash grab, and a lot of people are tired of them. So what if we picked the other fork? Still with a proven track record, it's part of the same lineage. But this way, we don't look like a cheap copy. Make an extraction shooter and be ahead of the curve. When this blows up, maybe we will have the Fortnite or PUBG. That's how we see the genre decision. Still a cynical business move, but with a drop of cunning. It's not a coincidence that several appear at the same time. Tarkov gets popular, and the companies notice. They put something in development, hoping to cash in. Then, years later, everyone who made this bet releases the same thing. It's a little more creative, but hardly an underdog story. The name would have a similar motive. We need to start earning back that $1 billion, and quickly. Is there a name that might be lucrative? Bungie had quite a popular game called Destiny, but they probably didn't want to make another of those yet. Obviously, their most famous game is Halo. It would be the optimal choice if only they had the rights to it. Okay, that's the top candidates ruled out. What else do we have? After delving deep into the archives, they found a dusty old IP, a name whispered by Halo fans who want to sound cool. Technically, we own the rights to this marathon series, and we are currently making zero profit from the brand. It's time to activate some under-leveraged equity.
We kind of want to reactivate Saints Row, reactivating Vault tier IP, and you're probably feeling it now, and you're right. It's Bubsy time.
This is what Marathon 2026 seems to be. Not a game created because somebody wanted Marathon 4. It's an extraction shooter because that looks like a safe bet. It's titled Marathon because that's the most valuable brand we can orchestrate.
Why did Bungie want to make an extraction shooter?
I mean, extraction shooters are something that are passion of ours. I don't know, bring a lot more people into it. When you love something, you really kind of want to just, attract others to it.
Bungie's reasoning for wanting to make Marathon was to take what is good about extraction shooters, but popular. It reminded me of 7 years ago, the announcement that Fortnite would be introducing a Battle Royale mode. You gotta remember, Fortnite was started off as, originally it was planned as this just, zombie survival game. Anyway, here's a young, bright-eyed Donald Mustard explaining why they're trying this out.
At Epic, we're huge fans of the Battle Royale genre and games like PUBG and H1Z1, and we thought that Fortnite was the perfect world to build one.
Self-awarded best in class.
Bungie brings its best in class.
Must be best in class. Anyway.
This is what you are required to build, so get to work. Now, maybe it's the best extraction shooter ever. Perhaps it is the true continuation of Marathon lore, taking everything that came before and creating one unified whole. There might even be someone working there who really likes the art style. We certainly hope that's the case. But there's nothing here that requires it to be Marathon. This business with runners and 3D printed shells? That's not necessary. It's a game. Death is a minor inconvenience to the gamer. We don't question how someone can come back to life, or why the entire military has the same 3 faces. Trying to explain this in-universe is more trouble than it's worth. It tends to create plot holes much worse than it fixes. And do you need to invoke Marathon to have an evil AI? This IP is surface level. You could reskin it to be Star Wars, Stargate, Mass Effect, and nothing would need to change because only the surface was branded. You don't need us to tell you what to think. If this is your kind of game, you've been playing it for months. There's an audience for this, and a vocal one. You'll probably find a few of them in the comments. There are the spectators, camped out in front of the Steam charts, waiting for its inevitable demise as an always online game. And it will die, as surely as Kathleen Kennedy would stop working. At least, unless Stop Killing Games can grant eternal life. We just thought the Marathon reboot was worth looking at. An interesting topic to delve into as an outsider. Thank you for watching to the end. We'll be back next time with something completely different. There are two ways to support us. Become a patron at patreon.com/thebreadcircus, or become a YouTube member by clicking the join button. Alternatively, subscribe, like, and comment. Only the former options guarantee that your name lives on in history. Everything else is embarrassing YouTubey stuff.
What, you think you're some kind of Jedi waving your hand around like that? I'm a Toydarian. My tricks don't work on me. Only money. No money, no parts, no deal.